All right, welcome back, Jerry.
Hello, America again. Hello,
Hey.
Tamara. Hello, everyone.
We're here again.
Doing it today.
So, polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome. Wow, what a mouthful.
You
We're just going to
know,
say PMOS.
it's so it's ingrained into my brain to still say PCOS, but PCOS or polycystic ovary syndrome, ovarian syndrome. It never really made sense because just the designation makes it sound like an ovarian problem, right? But really, all along, it's been a metabolic problem. And so I love the name change. I'm thankful that the gurus and the Endocrine Society and the International Menopause Society and all the players got together and went, you know what? Name change.
Because this whole time, Jerry,
This whole time. It's
been a metabolic
been a metabolic problem, and we've blamed the ovaries. And I think, and I'll be honest with you, 15 years ago, 10 years ago even, I self-admittedly, my thinking was wrong on this. And the way we treated it was very algorithmic and like, let's just go with what the book says to do. And now I have something different to say. I feel like attacking it in a more aggressive but yet different way gets better results for these women. It just does.
Well, we love a rebrand.
We love a rebrand. and I'll throw this one out there. I love spicing up a little bit. I think there's male PCOS or male PMOS too. This is where you get in the genetics part. Certainly males don't have ovaries. Come on. But there's
So
a thing
call
there.
it PMS?
I don't know. I haven't come up with a good name for males, but today we're talking about females, and today we're talking about PMOS.
Yes, because you brought it to my attention. It's not a one size fits all situation.
Absolutely.
PMOS comes in different varieties.
It's much more diverse than we thought. Historically, most providers that are probably listening to this would have said, well, PCOS patients or PMOS patients, I'm going to use those terms interchangeably for this video, so don't get mad at me. They have to be obese.
Yeah.
They have to have the cysts. They have to have X or Y, or they're not PCOS, right? Historically, the Rotterdam criteria, everybody go Google that, look it up. Mm-hmm. You had to have 2 of the 3 major categories of the Rotterdam criteria to be PCOS. Well, what we know now is that that criteria can somewhat be exclusive of people that maybe haven't have just ever been tested or haven't, there's the criteria can be exclusive. There can be other people that would probably be PMOS if you listen to them and let's look at their history, but we've not treated them because, well, you don't meet the criteria. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, the interventions that have been available, the default answer, and still to this day, for some guidelines and some societies, is still like, well, just give them birth control. Let me tell you, the progestins that are in birth control, synthetic progestins that are in birth control, absolutely are not apples to apples with actual bioidentical progesterone that you would find in your normal female body. Mm-hmm. Okay. It absolutely does not have the same metabolite pathway. It does not make alloprogesterone or allopregnanolone. It doesn't do it. And even though it can do some of the work in the uterus, it doesn't do all the other neuroendocrine stuff, which is very important in actual PMOS when you start considering the genetics and how the hypothalamic tract controls the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone releases, the gonadotropin. So birth control is not as good a solution as maybe originally thought. Yeah. And certainly I don't love the other back part of the pathways for all the other things like gabapentin and this new neurokinin inhibitor that came out. I just don't love that. Why don't we use the natural hormones and something to reduce the insulin burdens? Yeah. It just makes more sense to me. Sorry, I digress.
Same. It's like birth control for PMOS feels like putting Scotch tape on an open wound. You really need a band. Why not use a Band-Aid?
It's kind of like, in the education material that we give to our providers, I kind of make the joke. It's like, okay, the smoke alarm's going off, so I'm just going to keep hitting the mute button, but I'm ignoring the room that's on fire. Like, it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, I love that.
Why would you do that?
What are some of the less traditional manifestations of PMOS.
I got you. The categories. Sorry, back to the original topic of this video. Well, again, traditionally we've said, okay, obesity and insulin resistance and the cysts and the dysmenorrhea, the oligomenorrhea for like 30 plus days. That's your traditional PCOS patient, okay? What do we do when we see the skinny person that still has hyperandrogenism? They still are having facial hair. They still may or may not have the cysts. It may be difficult for them to get pregnant. What about that person? Well, they're skinny, so they're not PCOS, right? Not necessarily. There's adrenal subtypes. This is where you get into the genetics of this. There are luteal phase defect subtypes where this patient A, can't make as much progesterone because, here we go, when you have this crazy high luteinizing hormone burden, I don't get too deep in the weeds here, people are going to get mad. When this freight train of luteinizing hormone just keeps chugging along and doesn't allow the appropriate rise and fall of FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, you don't necessarily mature the selected follicle or the egg the same way. Thus, you never truly get a big enough corpus luteum to make enough progesterone. And this snowballs into these women continually stimulate their adrenal glands to make testosterone. It limits how inherently estradiol gets converted from testosterone in the ovary. So it's like limiting that conversion. So what you wind up with is a bunch of testosterone floating around and a bunch of body hair growing and a bunch of women that don't ovulate correctly and they can't get pregnant, but they're not overweight. Insulin resistance can still be a part of their problem. A lot of times is. But attacking them in the same way that we attack the morbidly obese lady is not the same. These adrenal women don't do well when they go do HIIT training or stress themselves out or get a giant caloric deficit. It actually makes them worse. So the adrenal subtype, the luteal phase defectors that can't make enough progesterone, or the other type of luteal phase defect where they can make some, but maybe the receptors aren't sensitive to the progesterone for, again, here we go back to genetic reasons or inhibiting factor reasons like cortisol. So those flavors of PCOS or PMOS absolutely don't fit the clinical picture the same way that the traditional people did, and they quite often get overlooked. If you take an athlete that literally looks, very lean, very muscular. Let's take you, for example. If you walked in to an OBGYN office and told them you had PCOS, they would laugh at you most likely. But you absolutely could. You absolutely could. So I think it's a paradigm shift to start talking about why do we limit people to only the Rotterdam. There are other criteria. They're in the international guidelines. They're slightly different. So I think we have to be open to that as providers and go, I'm going to get nerdy and educate myself about all the different flavors of PMOS and then start looking at the genetics of this to try to help my patients better.
So if for women who are suspecting that they have some problems in that regard, but they're not overweight and they don't meet the Rotterdam criteria, what are some things that they could look for?
Cycle irregularity, sexual dysfunction, the fact they've never been able to get pregnant, perhaps, or they've had 100 miscarriages, or their entire family has had a bunch of miscarriages. You look at the mother, grandmother, sister, aunt; they've had ovarian or uterine cancers at a higher rate, or fibroid formation because they have unopposed estradiol because they can't make progesterone. Chronic fatigue, plays into this. Even thyroid dysregulation plays into this because of high cortisol values. So, again, a broken record. Like, here we go, shameless plug. If you're that person, you need to come to a clinic like Optimize You. But even if it's not Optimize You, I don't mind that at all. Go somewhere where that provider knows what they're looking for, does the appropriate workup and history taking and lab panel assessment, and can actually help you. That you don't have to suffer in silence as we have. I think women's health has a giant disparity, and for 40 plus years, or specifically even after the Women's Health Initiative, 2001 ish, we're 30 years into. I think women have been ignored from a sexual health, from an ovarian health, from an ovarian aging standpoint. I know that's getting, like, that's the buzzword these days is ovarian age. We've ignored them, and it's sad, and we need to undo that.
Yeah. While we're there, you mentioned Women's Health Initiative.
Uh-oh.
We talked about progestin.
Uh-oh.
Can you give us just a high level view of, I think people have heard that maybe is kind of sort of going to go down in the history books as one of the most fraudulent studies of all time.
Right, the largest taxpayer funded study ever.
Right. And definitely as far as just the generations of women it's done a disservice to, but what specifically, if you had to break it down, were the major problems with that?
Let's do a 1-minute rant here, and I'll try to keep it somewhat cordial. They set up a primary prevention study. So they're wanting to prove or disprove whether or not hormones could prevent some of these menopausal changes, right? Well, wouldn't you think, if you're trying to prove that you would pick candidates for the study that didn't already have the disease you were saying you were going to prevent? Yet over 60% of the test base was like over 60 years old with already 1 or 2 comorbidities. So they chose a bunch of older patients that already were sick and already had the diseases they were trying to prevent. That's not fair that's bias. Secondly, they didn't use any of the natural sex hormones. They didn't use actual progesterone that you'd find in your body. They didn't use actual estradiol you'd find in your body. They used progestins. Actually, they used medroxyprogesterone acetate like you'd find in birth control. It doesn't have the same metabolic endpoints. It's not the same drug, guys. It's just not. It's a cousin. And then for the estrogen, they chose Premarin. That's pregnant mare urine, Premarin. It comes from horses. It's not in humans.
Let me say that again. Pregnant mare urine.
Premarin. Yeah. Pregnant mare urine. Yeah. So you take a bunch of things foreign to the body, you put them in the body, and you have some weird outcomes. What did you expect? What doesn't get talked about enough is years later, when other studies started using the natural sex hormones and they had way better outcomes, that doesn't get talked about as much.
Sure.
Go look at the Progest trial.
Because we've already set every headline out of that study was hormones cause cancer.
So unfortunately, and I'll dog on myself too, in years past, have I just looked at a study because like a drug rep in the office would come in and go, hey, look at this study, and you just jump down the conclusion, you just read the conclusion and go, well, that sounds convincing. Most providers, whether they're nurse practitioners, PAs, up to DOs, and then up to MDs, or like whatever level you're looking at here, PhDs actually do pretty good with it. But the provider side, the MD, DO, NP, PA pathway, we have a habit of not being trained in statistics. There's like no time for that, and a lot of people don't understand what the confidence interval means, or looking at the N, or looking at just hazard ratios. And you don't have to be a PhD in statistics to go do a little bit of work and understand what these studies mean and truly how the bias was set in to start with. The Women's Health Initiative, most providers just read the conclusion and went, yep, hormones are bad. Yeah. Well, we don't even talk about the confidence interval in their findings cross the 1. When that happens, this is invalid data. This is not statistically significant data anymore. From that point on, boom, done. It did, but no one talks about that. There's been so many revisions and letters to the editor, like in these throwaway journals about that, and it just doesn't get addressed. In fact, Rousseau, the guy that set the study up, the South African guy that set the study up, I watched a video where some person in the audience, he was speaking, raised their hand and said, hey, what about this confidence interval? And he just goes, sorry, that's the best data we had, and just ignored them and kept moving. He didn't even address the fact that it was statistically insignificant. So sorry, I don't mean to rant. I don't want to get nerdy. I'm just saying it's a garbage study.
I think your rant is warranted. It is a garbage study. I was just sitting in the sauna at the gym last week, and an NP was in there, and hormones came up. I was just listening in on conversations because that's what you do in the sauna is you eavesdrop. And she said, oh, no, I would never go on hormones. They cause cancer.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
what are we talking about?
Like, I'm too sweaty for this conversation.
Yeah.
But, oopsie daisies like that. the frustrating thing is it takes a lot of time to dismantle.
Well, yeah, I think you have to look every time at what kind of study is this, who paid for it, where's the bias, who set it up, how did they set it up, what was their sample size they're in, what was their outcomes, the confidence intervals. Like, you have to look at all that as a whole, not just jump to the conclusion section and go, yep, this is right or wrong. You can't do that.
And little plug there, a great resource for understanding those studies. Just as a layperson, I love the book Estrogen Matters.
Oh yeah, the Blooming book, sure.
Yeah, great book.
Smart guy.
All right. Well, I think we should end on your rants.
Okay,
That was
great.
amazing.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.